Welcome to SorWil Solutions, where we talk about what's going on in our community. Today, I'm joined by Ken Miller, former PIO for the City of Lansing, currently on the retired list, but pinch hitting for us today because our guest managed to have some other issues to address. So thank you for stepping in on such short notice, Mr. Miller.
My pleasure. And the title I've given myself is PIO Emeritus.
PIO Emeritus.
Right.
Okay. For your retired status.
Yes, that would be correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, technically, I'm not retired till January 1st, but for all intents and purposes, I'm out of the office now.
That's right. Nobody's calling you in.
The media says I'm on the beach. So I'm on the beach right now. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you making time for us. We've been friends for a very long time now, going back to when they redid the Public Works building, right?
It was the... currently it's the Community and Economic Development Office. We bought that, and when I say we, I mean the City of Lansing. That's going to be a hard habit to break.
Sure.
But the City of Lansing purchased the building we're in now. I want to say in 2008, 2009, and then they retrofitted it. So this building is the one that also includes the Lansing Community Library. So the library, Community and Economic Development, and Public Works administrative staff are in that building now.
Your background is in radio, communications?
Guilty as charged on both of them. I got a degree in journalism from Indiana University, and then I got a master's degree in communications from the University of Washington. First jobs out of school were radio related. Stayed in radio 10, 15 years, and saw an opportunity back in the early 90s to work for Bill Graves' administration, the former governor of the state of Kansas, and became the Kansas Department of Transportation Public Information Officer. Stayed with that for about 4 years, then went to work for a group that lobbies for highway funding and corridor funding. Stayed with that for the better part of 5 years. Did some additional things, and then in 2006 ended up with the City of Lansing, initially as a contractor because they were doing the Main Street project, K7. They were improving that. And after about a year and a half, when that contract was getting close to running out, a public information officer position was created by the City of Lansing. Mike Smith was the city administrator at the time, and that's all she wrote. I've been there the rest of my professional life, and glad I've been there. Yeah.
You're from the East Coast?
How could you tell?
It's quite obvious.
When I'm rooting
for
football teams that shouldn't be rooted for. Yeah, I'm from the state of New York. I actually grew up on Long Island, about 35, 40 miles outside of New York City. And at the ripe old age of 18, I went on to Indiana University. So you can imagine that was a little bit of a culture shock, but a good culture shock. So yeah.
You've been with the City of Lansing for a number of years, like you've said. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen there?
Well, I started out with the Main Street project, which was a major transportation project that really improved the K7 corridor running through Lansing proper. I would say that's probably the biggest project I was involved with right off the bat. And primarily my tasks were to listen to whether it's business owners, residents, whomever, that either used the corridor or lived along the corridor. Because as you would imagine, a project that large is going to disrupt some lives, and it certainly did. So I was kind of the go-between to them and the City of Lansing and KDOT, so that we could hopefully minimize the pain and the problems as much as possible. And I think for the most part, we did that. Well, if you would have asked me that question in 2006, it would have been a little different than the answer I would have given you circa 2025. Back in 2006, it was a lot more observing, interviewing, writing in terms of news releases that were going to end up on paper and then be sent out to whether it's news organizations, residents, businesses, whatever. Fast forward to now, and I'd say probably around 2010, 2011, it became a lot more social media focused as the platforms like Facebook and Twitter, now X, Nextdoor came to be. It's a lot more social media focused. And that's whether you're talking about canned events that we'd been planning for, or whether you're talking about more tragic things like accidents, weather conditions, and whatnot, spur of the moment type stuff. But I would say social media is probably the biggest change that we faced and we adapted with, and still adapt to this day.
As the PIO, I'm sure you've dealt with some very sensitive issues, things that are you have to communicate to the public. How do you balance what you can divulge that's sensitive with what the public probably needs to know?
Well, I would say, and I'm thinking of an example. On occasion, we've had prisoners escape from the Lansing Correctional Facility, and I really didn't have to hide or edit the information that I was going to put out, because if there were details that were very, very sensitive, chances are they weren't going to get to me anyway. The most important thing that needed to get to me is that there's a prisoner that's escaped. This is the time that he or she escaped, and just get that out to the public. Whether that's during the day when school's in session, which you can imagine would be very concerning, or overnight on Christmas Eve. Actually, July 4th. I remember there was an escape on July 4th a few years back. Regardless, you still have to get the information out. And it allows people to process that information and take the appropriate action, whether that's locking their doors, whether that's keeping their eyes open. Obviously, if we had a description of the prisoner that escaped, we would provide that. On social media, we could provide a picture if the Department of Corrections provided us a photo. So that's, there's a lot of give and take there. But really, and I would say that beyond events that required public safety consideration, you look at economic development projects, and companies are obviously very sensitive about when they share and what they share if they are getting ready to move to a new location. And again, chances are there might be one or two people in the city that know that coming down the pike. They might not tell me, and it's probably just as well. Not that I'm going to go tell everybody as soon as I hear, but just for their peace of mind and for the company's peace of mind, this is on a need-to-know basis, and your public information officer at this point doesn't need to know. Fine, no skin off my nose. But when the time comes and it's going to get before the planning commission or the city council, we more than likely are going to give full detail to who this new business might be. So it's something that there's a balance there, obviously. And I might hear something, offhand comment, whether it's by an elected official or one of our staffers. But, the default mode is you don't talk about it, because we've seen in Lansing, and I know this is true elsewhere too, you get to the 2-yard line a lot of times with some of these businesses and something goes wrong. And if you've already put it out there that they're coming and they don't, you look bad. You got egg on your face.
Makes sense. Looking back at the number of things that you've done, and aside from the K7 project, what's the next project you're probably the most proud of?
We've had, I want to say, 3 sales tax initiatives in Lansing in the time that I was there. We had one for parks improvements and to improve DeSoto. We had one for the aquatic center. And there's a third one. I think it was the county. That was one where we worked with the county, and all the cities in the county worked with Leavenworth County to improve. There were 3 major projects: McIntyre, 147th Street between Lansing and Baser, and then Eisenhower. Those 3, as the public information officer and working very closely with our city administrator and our elected officials, you've got to be very careful about how you put that information out to the public. You cannot be seen as advocating for any of that. You have to be more educational. Here's what happens. This is how much your tax is going to go up, whether it's sales tax or whatnot. Here's how long this project would take, how much it's going to cost overall, the bonds, all of that. And if you put that out factually, you want to put that out factually and often and in as many different media outlets and platforms as you can. And we did that those 3 times. And all 3 of them, although 2 of them were, razor thin margins, they did pass. I think the countywide sales tax re-up for those 3 transportation projects, I think that won by a little bit more than the hair on your chinny chin chin. But all of them passed, and I think it's being borne out. The pool being the latest, all of these projects are good for Lansing as it's turned out, whether that's for improving the transportation network, the parks department, and what our parks can offer, parks and recreation can offer. I would say that there are very few people that would point at any of them now in the community and say that project was a failure, because none of them have been.
Well, it's awesome. As we talk about memorable moments, though, you have had the opportunity to interview a number of people.
Yeah.
What is one of the most memorable interviews that you gave or worked with?
I've interviewed all of our state lawmakers, and this is going back several generations, several legislative generations. I always enjoy that. But the one I remember the most was interviewing former Lansing volleyball coach Julie Slater. And I think it was after, I don't think they won state, but after they had gone to state, and I think maybe finished second. And it was just interesting because my daughter plays and played volleyball in high school and in college. And it was just really, interesting and neat to interview her. She had been here for such a long time and I know they won state at least once while she was here, if not more. It was just interesting to hear her perspective on how you maintain, and this goes beyond sports and youth sports, how do you maintain a successful program, the efforts that you have to put in as a person, but also as a culture builder. And I think volleyball in that case really teaches a lot about life, persistence, being prepared, not resting on your laurels. All of those life lessons were all contained within her volleyball program. And I would say the Lansing volleyball program in general, because they've had I think they took fourth at state this past weekend. They have been successful forever. And that's really hard to do.
No, that's a great story. And I've heard, and I don't really remember a time when Lansing's volleyball program really wasn't competitive.
Right.
Which that's hard to maintain consistency over the years.
Right.
What have been some of the challenges that you faced as the PIO for City of Lansing and making sure that everybody had the information that they needed?
Well, I would say the biggest challenge, and it continues to grow as a challenge, is just responding to social media when, especially anonymous posters would put things out there based on something that they heard, trying to tie it to a Facebook post that the city was putting out. You've been involved with some of that yourself. And that is the biggest challenge, because you have to determine, okay, this post is crazy, it doesn't even warrant a response, versus they're putting out some information that's just not true. We have to respond. So there's more art than science in that. And that was always a challenge. And thankfully for Lansing, that wasn't an everyday thing, but it happened enough, whether you're talking about the RHID issue that we've had in terms of trying to spur housing development in Lansing. There are other things as well. COVID was a big one, and people, the issue of, you can't force me to get a shot versus it's for the public good. And that's, you don't think of that as just a Lansing issue, but it became a Lansing issue, and it was an issue everywhere, I think. Public safety versus our rights, as individuals. So that's challenging. And how do you navigate that when you're putting out information about the city and what the city's doing, or the school district for that matter, and just public safety? We worked very closely, obviously, with the Leavenworth County Health Department at that time, and just trying to get the information as it was being fed from the CDC, federal CDC. But even you saw then, just because they were the CDC didn't mean everybody was going to believe them. And there was a lot of backlash to that too. So we got to navigate that, because a lot of our citizens weren't going to buy what the CDC was selling at that time. So, those were a couple of challenging moments. But the one overall, regardless of issue, has been countering social media, especially, as I mentioned, people who don't put their name behind it. That's an automatic 100% red flag, and then you wonder, is it coming from somebody local? Is it somebody just trying to stir up trouble? Is it coming from overseas? Is this bot generated? All these things went into consideration in terms of how do we respond.
Have you ever come across something on social media that was just really alarming and You needed to get more input from other people as to how to respond?
Nothing's coming to mind. If there would have been something really huge, really big, I'm sure I would have remembered, that point in time. But it was more just misinformation getting out there. And while it could be considered malicious in some cases, it I don't know if in court it would have held up for slander and libel, that type of thing.
Mhm.
And again, that's a fine line to walk too. So nothing's coming to mind in terms of a really bad, erroneous, false, malicious campaign to either drag the city through the mud or people in the city through the mud.
I'm going to take this misinformation discussion just to another level for a minute.
Mhm.
We see this in politics on a regular basis now. It's almost a tactic in order for people to get the response that
Right.
they want. And so a lot of the community doesn't really know what to believe anymore. How do we battle misinformation like that, especially on the level that we see it in politics?
Well, I think you have to be persistent. You have to grow your social media, grow your email as the city, grow your social media, grow your email lists. You've probably noticed it's been up for 3 or 4 years now. There's a scoreboard type monument out in front of City Hall in the community center in Lansing. It's something as simple as that, putting messages on there. I think it helps to be um, blanketing to the extent you can your information. But it brings up a good point, and this is more looking forward. You took the class, the
Mhm.
Citizens Academy in Lansing, and other cities do this too. But as that class, I think we're in our 15th year, and again, I keep seeing we, City of Lansing, but we're in our 15th year, and if you figure we had between 7 and 10 class members each year, that's 150 or so, give or take, people who have taken this class. Not all of them have stayed in the area, but have taken this class and have a much better knowledge and appreciation of how the city works from not only an elected official but from a staff and departmental perspective. To the point where I've always looked at those folks as kind of little ambassadors to the city and a liaison to their neighborhoods,
Mhm.
or people that are in their social groups or in their the Lions Club. All of those groups, these are all potential um, areas and places where you can take your message to them, and hopefully when they hear your message, if somebody is countering that with different information, wait a minute, I heard from so and so with the city of Lansing, that's not the case, this is what they say. So at least you may not totally flip them, but at least they know there's another perspective out there.
What is one thing you'll miss most about working with the city?
Oh, camaraderie, the people that I've
Mhm.
worked with. I include you in that too. I mean,
I
you're
appreciate
you're
that. Thank you.
you're one of our contracting consultants for information technology. Seems like you're a staffer because I see you so often. Because that IT, you didn't have to be over there in 2009 every day, but it seems now because we're so data dependent, and our job functions are so IT interwoven, you got to be there all the time, or one of your staff has to be there almost all the time to make sure that information keeps flowing. But I would say the camaraderie. I've had. I knew I was going to retire at this time at least 2 years ago. So every time I would go to an event, well, this is the last time I'm going to do that, and it just gave me more of an appreciation. I'll still see these folks. I mean, it's not like I'm going to drop off the face of the earth, but I'm not going to see them in the same capacity, and I'm not going to see them as often. So I would tell you that I'm going to miss, and I say that I'm going to miss in the day to day. I'm going to miss the people that I worked with. But that said, I'm not. I still only live 10 miles down the road. I'm up here today.
That's right.
I'm dressed in workout clothes. I'm going to continue to work out at the City of Lansing, through my actual formal retirement date. And I would imagine I'd probably join a gym that'll have an out location in Lansing as well. So I'll be around. But it is a little bit different. It feels a little bit. I've only been retired for 2 days now, but it feels a little bit different already. I'm sleeping better. So that's a good point.
You're sleeping more. I
I'm
bet.
sleeping more and I'm sleeping better. Right.
You brought up what the amount of IT needs you had in 2009 versus today. The amount of staff between that time has doubled, has it not? It seems like we're over almost 80 people now. It would seem like
I guess if you're looking at pure numbers, you're probably right. But when you say staff doubled, I look at the department I served in, and that staff has not doubled. If anything, it's probably lower numbers than it was. But when you add the fire department, which used to be
yep.
a Leavenworth County Fire District 1, it's now City of Lansing Fire Department. When you add an aquatic center that has to be staffed, yeah, you're right. The number of Lansing employees has grown, but across all of the, let's just call them the legacy departments, I don't believe that's the case. I think that our staff, the numbers have either stayed the same or maybe even dropped a little bit.
You've set a high bar for the person that takes over for you, and we found out who that is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been posted.
Yeah.
Diana Dodd has taken the role
Right.
on. I think she'll do a great job.
Definitely.
I think she's a pretty incredible person.
Well, one thing, let me interject here. One of the smart things that the City of Lansing did is that, and this is thanks to Diana Dodd as well as the city, is that there was a week overlap between when I was no longer in the office, 40 hours a week, and when she was coming on. So I was able to impart, and a lot of this is technical things, but I was able to impart a lot of my scientific knowledge. It's something where I think the on ramp for her was smoother because we were able to overlap. So with that said, I've gotten to know her a little bit in the week. I knew her beforehand, but really, got to know her better in the week we were both serving as PIOs. And she's going to do a fantastic job. I think she knows the community. You look at when she posted, I think it was her first Facebook post that was basically, "Hey, I'm the new PIO." You look at the people who commented and liked on that, and it is a list of movers and shakers, people who are committed to this community, who have been in this community, who know this community. They know her. So I think, and I'm not saying that the other candidates who applied for the job wouldn't have been great, but I don't think any of them, to my knowledge, would have had the same instant impact because they were a known commodity in the community.
What piece of advice would you give to her in order to be as successful, if not more?
I would tell her, and she already knows this. I mean, she's got experience. When people are being nasty, when they're being mean, whether that's on a post, whether that's to your face, 99.9% of the time, it isn't you that they're directing their anger at. It's the City of Lansing. It may not feel like that, but it's not you. And if you can keep that in the back of your mind while people are being people, I think it's going to help you take it down a notch, and it's going to allow you to respond with your full faculties instead of in anger or emotion. And it's going to be a better response, not only for you, but for the City of Lansing as well.
Part of that frustration leads to people, once again, providing misinformation. And you're never going to satisfy all of the
Absolutely
people
not.
all of the time. Right. So communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
Where do people go when they need to find out information for the city if they're not on Facebook? Because we have an older generation that may not be on Facebook. And the newspaper, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's not what it used to be.
Right.
So where did they go for information?
Well, I mean, we mentioned the scoreboard that's out in front of the community center on Main Street there, K7 and is that Lansing Lane. The newspaper is still, people still take the newspaper, so I'm not going to count that out. There is, I think just about everybody, it's very rare that you find somebody who doesn't have an email address and can't use email. There is something that we developed, I think in 2009, called the Friday E-Blast, and it's kind of a digest of all the news that happened that week with links to our website and more information on it. It's the quickest way to keep up with what's going on. But I think the fact of the matter is, and you're in IT, you know this, we are now focused on providing information via the internet, via technology, and with AI coming on, That's going to be a new set of challenges for people like Diana in her position. What is fake news? What is being generated by megabytes as opposed to me and you? I see that as a big challenge moving forward. But it's you almost have to try to avoid information. And I'm not just talking about Lansing. I'm talking about anywhere. You have to avoid it to not get it. But with that said, you as a citizen have to have some skin in the game. You can't expect people to drop off leaflets on your front doorstep. Although I think that happens sometimes. We're not going to spoon feed it to you. You have a responsibility as a citizen, whether that's a business person, whether that's as a resident, whatnot. You have a responsibility to be open to doing your due diligence and finding that information. What better day than election day, which is when we're recording this? That is your responsibility as a citizen. Now, people are going to say, oh, I choose not to vote, and that's my choice. Okay, but, when your taxes are going up, don't complain because the candidate that won had to do, I don't want to hear that. I don't think any communications professional is going to give that argument much credence. So it's incumbent on all of us, the communicators and the people and the businesses and the entities and the agencies that we're directing our message to. They've got to be receptive to it in terms of being able to listen to it and then formulate your own opinions after that. That's fine. You don't have to agree with us, but at least be educated enough to say, yeah, I heard this, this, and this. This is what I think.
Those are all great points. And I think it leads to a much larger discussion when we're going to move out of the city of Lansing just for a minute and talk a little bit about politics, because you're well versed on that topic as well. And we've had a number of political discussions, especially as I've run for office. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing our county right now?
The biggest challenge, and I think you would get this answer from most people, whether they're staff, whether they're elected officials and whatnot. The biggest challenge right now is trying to find a sustainable way to fund government, to grow the community. And that's obviously going to have property taxes, sales tax, the revenues from those. But it also gets back to economic development, which I think has been a challenge for Leavenworth County. And when I say Leavenworth County, I'm also including the cities within.
Sure.
Now, there have been some great victories in the 20 years I've been here. There's a dog food processing plant down there outside of Tonganoxie. You drive into Leavenworth, you've got great companies there. Even Lansing has had some growth. And when I say growth, not just commercially and industrially, but also housing growth, because you've got to grow your population. To me, that's the biggest challenge, is to continue that and then dovetail that into and be able to tell the story of that to your citizenry in such a way that they're going to be satisfied with that information and not feel like they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes. That is a huge challenge. And that is more to do with the political atmosphere that we're in right now. It's so easy to hate as a communicator. How do you make it harder to hate? And that's by getting information out there, being seen as transparent, and always telling the truth. That's the most important thing. Unfortunately, sometimes communicators will say something because they've been told by upper staff, electeds. Well, yeah, that's our job, is to get that out there. And it turns out not to be true. I mean, that ruins everybody's reputation on the spot. So I'm happy to say in the 20 years that I was there, I was never put in that situation. I never had that situation. And there are some people out there that might beg to differ, but I know better, because I was at the tip of the spear, so to speak, when it came to communicating the message out.
You worked with a number of mayors in the city of Lansing and during your time there. Who was the most memorable for you?
Oh, I think the other four would have said this too, but Ken Bernard, and he was the first mayor that I worked with. And maybe it's because I had a lot of one-on-one time with him. He and I would go once a month to the Mid-America Regional Council transportation meetings. So 45 minutes in the car there, 45 minutes. We had a chance to, kind of talk things over. And I appreciated that he was able to give me so much insight. And this was early on in my tenure. So that really helped me understand the community even more than I would have just through the day-to-day tasks that I did. So he'd be the most memorable. I've gotten to know the current mayor, Tony McNeil, a little bit better, visiting with him at some of our events. And he is doing a good job, but he is also in the position at a time where the political rancor is at an all-time high for Lansing, at least in my 20 years being here. So he's got a lot of navigating to do, and I think he's done a good job of it too. You just have to watch some of the city council meetings on video, especially when we have a controversial issue or topic. He runs that meeting, so he's got to be very judicious in how he runs it, how he gives time to people, both yay and nay people. And I think he's done a good job of that.
Speaking of the council, obviously that is a nonpartisan position. I think it was Councilman Studnicka that said through the years, and I think he was one of the longest tenured council people for Lansing, that, what he always tells new council people and what they try to do is leave their politics at the door. Do you think that the council has run nonpartisan in that capacity for the time you were there?
Yeah, I for the most part, I would agree with that statement. It's interesting because I watch the Leavenworth County meetings on a weekly basis, sometimes more often, and you hear things as far as like other cities in the county and other cities throughout Northeast Kansas. It's interesting to me. It just seems like, and I'm going to sound like a homer here, but it just seems like the city of Lansing, in terms of their city council through the years, it's just been minimal drama. Not to say we didn't have any drama. I can think of a couple of instances where, whether it was staff related and staff not getting along with certain elected people, but you have that everywhere. But I would say overall in the 20 years, it's been minimal drama. Not to say we haven't had challenges. I mean, COVID was a challenge. Going revenue neutral is a challenge, and still being able to provide services like we've been known for. It's challenging. But in terms of just two council members going at it, that has been minimal. That's been minimal. And I think there are other examples in other cities in this area. And when I say in this area, I'm talking about Northeast Kansas, not just Leavenworth County, where you will see emotions bubble over to the point where I think it detracts from that organization or that council or commission's ability to govern and make the best decisions for their electorate.
I'm going to ask you another question that's going to be probably a more difficult to answer, but you've got a good sense of all the players in our county. Why does it seem that it is so hard for a lot of the cities to get along with each other, or the county?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the smoke-filled rooms with all these, and that's why I before I say what I'm about to say, there's a caveat. I'm not with all of these people all of the time. I don't know their story and the reasons necessarily why they're doing what they do, but it just seems to me, and I think it's gotten a little bit better, but it just seems to me like there's still competition within the county itself, city versus city, city versus county, and whatnot. How much of that is just personal between people, personality driven? I don't know. But with that said, we've seen it. I'll use KDOT as an example. Getting projects into the KDOT pipeline. I know for a fact the Secretary of Transportation, and not just the current one, but secretaries prior to that, would take a look at what was happening in Leavenworth County and see 5 different entities pushing 5 different projects. Meanwhile, Johnson County, which has a lot more political pull, was smarter at the time and realized that, hey, if we fix US 69 and make it better, it runs through 5 cities. And it's something where everybody benefits, even though the project credit would go to the city of or Johnson County itself. They pulled together more quickly. And how much of that is having the lobbying pull in Topeka to do that? That remains, I can't answer that because I've never worked for Johnson County. but I think there's more, and because they have more resources too, and this is true of Wyandotte County too, because they have more resources that they can designate in Topeka, I think that helps them as well. Not to say that, whether it's Lansing or Leavenworth County, we can go to Topeka too, and we can do this as well. But I think it's just they have a stronger presence there because they spend more money on it. They've got more staff. So that's you're already got in Leavenworth County. You already have one strike against you because you've got 800-pound gorillas surrounding you. But with that said, I think it's getting a little bit better. There was a recent, and I was not able to attend. I want to say it was about 3 weeks ago. KDOT did another one of their biannual meetings where you go and advocate for projects. And I think the county has gotten better at coordinating the cities and the county itself and the message that they're going to bring to KDOT and really to the governor, if you extend it out, about we are playing nice together. We do see, Lansing sees advantages if Baser gets this, or Leavenworth County sees advantages if Lansing gets that. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to drive down K7. I'm going to be in two counties, Maybe we should be working closer with Wyandotte County because that impacts us. Maybe we should be working closer with Platte County over on the Missouri side. This is a way to grow. A rising tide floats all boats. I think if that was an attitude that prevailed, I think eventually Leavenworth County and the cities within get to the promised land.
I've said that quote on a couple of times in Facebook posts too, because I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that LCDC has said that quote a number of times. I'm on the board of LCDC. I don't hide that. LCDC has been bashed lately in county commission meetings. I've had people come up and say they weren't voting for me because I was on the LCDC board. That's fine.
Right.
Economic development has been a struggle for our community, for everyone. Maybe not as much for Baser, maybe even not as much for Tonganoxie, but it seems everybody else has some struggles there. The county tried to create a development director position. That didn't work out.
Right.
Where do you see economic development growing in our county, or who is leading it if it's not LCDC?
Right. That's a good point. And I don't have a crystal ball.
Sure.
I don't, I think it's fair. And I can say this, maybe it's not something you want to say. I'm concerned that LCDC may not be around a year or two from now.
Sure.
I think you look at the financials and that seems to be the trend. Is it, if there is a groundswell that the community wants to save LCDC or a reasonable facsimile, a group that does economic development first and foremost, are the businesses within the county ready to pony up more than they already have? Those, in my estimation, those types of development corporations, whether it's KCADC, every city has an MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, who also can be a liaison to the business community. You need significant funding to have a successful organization like that. Right now, and you're on the board, you tell me, is it 70% public money and 30% private money that funds LCDC and LCPA?
I'd say it's pretty close to the cut.
Does everybody feel better if that's more of a 50-50, which puts more onus on the business community? That's the way I see it having to go if you're going to save an organization like LCD. And here's where I'm going to plead ignorance to a certain extent. Do we have the critical mass of businesses in Leavenworth County for them to be able, and it's not cheap, in order for them to buy membership to help, what's LCPA, what's in the kitty right now? $500,000, $600,000?
Somewhere around 600.
That's in case somebody, a developer, whoever comes to the community and says, we want this. That's in reserve to hit that home run. Are there discussions like that going on right now? I don't know, but that's the type of thing. You've got to have money in the kitty. You've got to have funding in the kitty to offer to somebody who brings you a project that the elected people and the citizens want and see as a good idea. We're probably going to find out, I'm saying, in the next 6 months, where did the Royals end up? And it still could be on the Missouri side. Where do the Chiefs end up? Probably going to be on the Missouri side. But that's not a guarantee yet. The Hunt family hasn't signed any documents and had any announcements. Same thing. I'm drawing a blank on John Sherman, right? Don't know exactly. They're still mulling it over. God, what would that look like? Even if it located in Wyandotte County, the spinoff from that in Leavenworth County. Are we nimble enough here in Leavenworth County to be able to move and take advantage of that? I can't answer that question.
It's funny that you say that because I just saw across the ticker on the news this morning that the Royals were looking at 3 locations, 2 in Missouri, but 1 in Overland Park at this point.
Right.
So it would be interesting to see. And I think, the use of star bonds to try to pull them over has been, what really is enticing them at the moment. But as we look at incentives and we talk about RHID, incentives are frowned upon by the working class community, it seems.
I wouldn't say all the work, but I would say a segment of it. I wouldn't say all of it. That's what I would say. And if you look at Lansing's history, I'll take Lansing because I'm familiar with it. The RHID was met with a lot of angst, a lot of aggression against it. But going back to your point, how many people in Lansing were really aware of it? So was that a situation where the vocal few were able to shoot down 2 of those 3 RHID projects? Or is it more that it's not wrong to look at that as corporate welfare, corporate handout to the developers who are going to make money? They wouldn't be putting the project forward if they didn't think they could make money on the project itself, regardless, without RHID assistance. So, I don't know. I want to be very clear here. This is Ken Miller talking. I don't work.
Sure.
I don't technically work for the city of Lansing anymore. But that's the type of thing, if we're going to compete with Johnson County and Wyandotte County and Douglas County for that matter, and then your Missouri County sides, we got to have I think the front has gotten more unified, but it's got to get more unified even more now. Because you're already having to punch above your weight when you're going against those folks. We saw the Panasonic battery plant, which I think is it producing batteries now, or it's about to produce batteries?
I think we're getting ready to.
Yeah. Look at what's happening in DeSoto. That city is being transformed before our very eyes. Is there anything out there? You're looking at these AI. What does AI need? What do those server farms need? There's speculation about that. We've got a lot of green space here, but how much are these entities, whether it's Facebook, Google, the parent company's names, Alphabet, right? What are they going to require? What kind of skin in the game do they want from the locals in order to put something like a data farm, out here? And then I'm not even getting into what kind of public resources need to be absorbed, water, electricity. What's that going to do? These are all huge questions that, maybe this is where Leavenworth County finds a niche. Are there folks, elected or top level staff, already having these discussions? I don't know. They haven't told me. Or maybe those discussions are going to come along a year from now. What did Kansas City? I just saw Kansas City, Missouri was talking about, was it a $2 billion water? It was something to be able to take care of the AI needs.
The server farms require a lot of water, and so they need to be located
right,
near a place where they can get a lot of groundwater or into the facility.
Exactly. We know that's not going to happen out in Western Kansas because they're struggling with water needs without having AI issues. So that's, to me, that's the next great frontier. How do we position ourselves as Leavenworth County and the cities within to at least get a piece of the pie when it comes to this AI revolution?
As a public information officer and communications individual, we know that foreign entities will flood, especially during election campaigns, flood the news with misinformation. That has got to be a concern for any organization. And so how do we battle that in itself as well?
You're the IT guy, you tell me, because that's technology versus technology right there. I think it would be kind of pie in the sky for us in Little Lansing to believe that there's no way that the Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans care about our city council race, but who knows? Sometimes I wonder, for these hackers, I'm not doing it because I think it's going to cause maximum damage. I'm doing it because I want to see if I can, And when I say one hacker, I'm talking about these organizations, you've read up on it, warehouses in Uzbekistan that are, wreaking havoc on our electrical grid, whatever. How do you combat the misinformation on that? You just continue. Hopefully you're a trusted source. City of Lansing, whether it's our social media, our website, our newsletters, word of mouth from our, elected officials and our staff and our Citizens Academy graduates, right? Hopefully that's enough to when somebody gets that crazy message via social media, wait a minute now. I know Joe, I'm going to go talk to him. This doesn't seem right, but what if it is? And they've already sown doubt. So maybe they've won half the battle already, but we need to be available to combat that.
We're going to shift gears now. I have a set of rapid fire questions that I'm going to ask you.
Jeez, Joe.
To get to
you're
know
buy me lunch at least. I'm getting hungry.
Miller,
this is working hard.
Get to know the Ken Miller that we're going to be missing.
Okay.
Normally I have a nonprofit shirt on. I announced that today. I'm reminding everybody, and this will be after the election, right. But it's important to get out there and vote, have your voice heard, and elected officials that are going to speak for you. I can't say that enough. Whether it's me or anybody else, it's important that the people choose who it is, and not, and that's all the people, not the few. But as we shift gears, if you had to describe the city of Lansing in one word after all these years, what would it be and why?
Can I have a phrase instead of a word?
Sure.
A great place to be. That's what it is. And I include the way the city provides services, the way the school district educates the kids, the parks and recreation opportunities that are available, the general atmosphere that, for the most part, we all get along. That's what I would include in that statement.
Okay. What was the first job you ever had?
The first job, I think I was 12 years old, and it was throwing not newspapers, but they were like penny savers. They're, ads. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world when I did that for a month, and I got a $25 check from, but that was, I was 12 years old. That would keep me in cash for a month, so that was my first job, my first professional job. If you don't include working during college, was a news director job after I finished my master's thesis in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I was a news director at a radio station there. Yeah.
As you ride off into the sunset, into retirement, what's the next thing for you?
Well, I want to do more video, and to start off with family history type stuff. That's a given, and if that grows into something else, so be it. I'm taking a lot of time now and just kind of thinking things through. My dad is going to be 94 years old in December, and it's going to be interesting. He still lives by himself. He's still pretty much with it. But I see now that I'm retired, I can be available to him, even to the point where if it's better for him to move out to Kansas so I can take care of him, if he needs that, I'll be available to do that. If that would have happened 2 years ago, it would have been a much bigger challenge because I still was working full time, still had a career. So those are a couple of the things. The little things like you and I play pickleball. I continue to, I love playing pickleball. I've gotten out of my golf game for the last year or two. I'm going to have more time to do that. So sports related things. One of the things that I've done personally to improve myself really for the last 15 years is to really get into exercise. I at one point weighed 240 pounds. I'm down to 185 now. I'd still like to get a little bit lower, but I'd also like to get toned more.
Sure.
So it's focusing on that. I work out every day, so that it's easier to continue that too, because there's not that full-time job getting in my way like it once was sometimes. So yeah, it's things like that. And I see it as it's an evolving book. I'm still writing other chapters to it. So we'll see.
Coffee, tea, or something else in the mornings?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay. Favorite spot in Lansing to relax or clear your head?
Angel Falls Trail.
Nice.
And the little waterfall that's there.
One word your coworkers would use to describe you.
A lot of them use the word New York. I haven't lived there since I was 18, but I think that I think they're when they hear somebody's from New York, I kind of become part of a stereotype. And part of it's my fault, but I think that's a lot of them first thing they would think of is, how many of them ask me, oh, you're retiring. Are you moving back to New York? No, I'm not moving back to New York. I've lived in Kansas I've lived in Kansas much longer than I ever lived in New York. I'm more of a Kansan than a New Yorker. Unfortunately, I grew up in New York. I still, especially when I get a little excited, you get the accent coming out. I still root for all the New York sports teams. That's got to change. It's got to change. But I keep getting dragged back into it. So what are you going to do?
Most memorable city event you ever helped promote?
I really enjoyed the fall festival, and that's regardless of which locale we held it at. And I think it's because the weather was almost always perfect. A lot of kids come out to that. It's great to see the kids petting zoos and just seeing pumpkin decorating and whatnot. I would say the fall festival is probably my favorite event. I enjoyed our fireworks shows, and the smaller events like the citywide garage sale and going out and getting photos of that, things like that. We used to do an event, I think you remember it, Brew, Blues, and Barbecue, and we'd have barbecue competition, 30, 40 teams. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of work, too, for the staff that did that. So, yeah, I would say, they're all great events. And the thing I always liked about them is, other than if you had to or wanted to purchase food or purchase playing games, it was all free. Like you could go there and hear bands for free. You could go there and, walk around and see a fireworks show for free. The city does a great job of, and it's true of other cities in the area too. I'm not saying Lansing is exclusive, but, the events that we put on, I think really, we always got 99.9% compliments after each of those events because people just loved being out there for that. And if you look at our attendance at those events, huge, for the little city that we are, huge attendance for that. So that means, to me, it means we're drawing people in from outside of Lansing proper too, which is exactly what you want to do.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to attempt to teach myself to play the mandolin. And it's tough, but if I could instantly be a world-class mandolin player, that's what I'd like to do.
Why the mandolin?
Just like the sound of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite decade for music?
1980s.
Okay. Something about city government most people would be surprised to learn.
The leaders, and both elected and the staff, want you to come to our meetings. They want you to sit in the crowd. And a lot of people don't do that, but they want you to. And when I would hear that, especially early on, not that it surprised me, but it was like, good. There should be more interaction between citizenry and their elected officials. And maybe there would be less misinformation if more people on a regular basis came to the meetings, followed the city, whether it's social media, website, newsletters, whatnot, word of mouth. I think it would be better for all of us.
If you could meet one historical person and have a conversation, who would it be?
I haven't given that one. I've given most of your questions thoughts or anticipated what they might be. I'm going to go Jesus Christ, and I'm not, you know me, I am not, I don't wear my religion on my sleeve or my faith on my sleeve. But there's a lot of philosophy that would go into that conversation above and beyond God and the Bible. That would be very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The last question. And then you're free to go.
Sure.
I am
You're not
sure.
pulling my leg.
Not pulling your leg.
Okay.
What's the best piece of advice you've gotten?
Stay busy. And that goes even before retirement. It's just in life, stay busy. Because there are mental and emotional benefits to that. When we stagnate, there's an open door to depression there, in my opinion. And if you're keeping busy, whether that's with family, friends, work, recreational activities, whatnot, that depression, the door is going to be closed a lot more to depression and just things that are going to bring you down. It's easier said than done. Not to say there isn't some good from having a little downtime and relaxing. But yeah, I would say stay busy.
All right. Well, Mr. Miller, thank you for being on our podcast, for pinch hitting for us today. I really appreciate it. I know this was not on your plan of things to do.
I got plenty of time in retirement, though. I got plenty of time.
That's our episode this week of SorWil Solutions. Join us next week for our next episode. And if you enjoy what we're producing, please subscribe and like those pages. That helps us bring you more of this content. Thanks and have a great week.